Stop. Before you rehearse your next perfect comeback, ask yourself this. If being right mattered so much in conflict, why do the calm liars win more arguments than the honest overthinkers? Why does the person who controls their tone control the room, while you, with all your logic and all your evidence, end up shaking, over-explaining, and regretting what you said? Why do some people walk away from fights with more power, more respect, more leverage, and you walk away exhausted, replaying every sentence in your head? Here's the dangerous truth. Conflict doesn't expose who's right. It exposes who's stable. The person who can stay calm under fire decides how far the fire spreads. The one who can hold their face, their voice, their posture when things get tense, that's the person everyone quietly orients around, even if they disagree with them. You felt this. The boss who never raises his voice but somehow freezes the whole room. The friend who doesn't argue, just gives you a look, and suddenly everyone is backtracking. That isn't magic, that's conflict power. Machiavelli understood this centuries before therapy, YouTube, or setting boundaries became buzzwords. He watched princes lose kingdoms not because they were weak on paper, but because they were unstable in conflict, panicking, overreacting, trying to be liked when they needed to be feared, trying to avoid small fights and creating bigger wars instead. His entire playbook is about one thing: standing firm when everyone else shakes. Tonight, you're not here to learn how to win petty arguments. You're here to learn how to become unshakable in conflict, how to walk into emotional war and keep your center, how to survive attacks on your character without melting down, how to sit across from someone who's trying to push every button you have and give them nothing they can use. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about finally becoming in control. Let's start with a brutal reset. Conflict is not an error in the system. Conflict is the system. Every relationship, every workplace, every family, every friendship, if it lasts long enough, it will hit tension. Most people live as if the goal is to avoid conflict forever. So when it hits, they take it as proof that something is broken or that they themselves are failing. That mindset makes you fragile. If you treat conflict like a glitch, you'll always be surprised, hurt, and emotional when it arrives. The unshakable mind expects conflict, not in a paranoid way, but in a realistic way. That one question shifts everything. Now you're not obsessing over how to prevent every raised voice or disagreement. You're training your stance, your face, your script for when it comes. Machiavelli was ruthless about this. California State University, Northridge. You've done this in your own life. You avoid hard conversations with your partner, your boss, your family because you're terrified of where it might go. It feels like you're choosing peace. You're not. You're choosing delay. The war still comes, just later and on worse terms, when you're more tired and they're more confident you won't do anything. Being unshakable in conflict starts with this acceptance. Tension is coming whether you like it or not. You either face it early on ground you choose with a spine, or you face it later on their terms already bent. So what does unshakable actually look like? It's not a stone face with no emotion. It's not yelling louder than everyone else. It's three things, always. Your pulse is lower than the room, your words are fewer than the room, your decisions are clearer than the room. If you can keep those three, you can be furious inside, hurt inside, scared inside, and still move like a ruler. That's the goal. Not to stop feeling, to stop leaking. In conflict, nobody can see your heart. They can't see how scared you are, how pure your intentions are, how much you're trying. They only see your appearance. Shaky voice, frantic talking, apologizing too much, over-explaining, chasing, ranting, exploding, crying, going silent, and then sending essays later. You might be the most honest one in the room, but if you appear unstable, they will treat you as unstable. They'll discount your words, they'll frame you as emotional, and they'll rewrite the story so that your reaction becomes the problem instead of their behavior. Unshakable people protect their appearance in conflict, not because they're fake, but because they understand that in a fight, optics are part of reality. Your calm doesn't mean you're okay with what's happening. It means you're smart enough not to hand your enemy free weapons. You don't slam doors, throw things, or send drunk paragraphs. You don't cry in front of people who have shown they enjoy your pain. You don't perform your breakdown for an audience who's already decided you're the villain. You feel everything, but you choose where and with whom you bleed. Think about your worst conflicts, the ones that still haunt you. Was the main damage what they did, or what you did after what they did? The texts you wish you never sent, the secrets you spilled, the insult you threw that they still quote as proof that you're the crazy one. Being unshakable is about cutting off that second wave. You may not control the first punch, but you absolutely control whether you hand them ammo for the next 10 years. Now let's talk about fear in conflict. Forget kings and armies for a second. In day-to-day conflict, this means something very simple. If people are forced to choose between really liking you and quietly fearing the consequences of crossing you, it is safer for you if the fear is stronger. Not fear of violence, fear of loss. Fear that if they lie, betray, disrespect, or humiliate you, they lose access to you. They lose your time, your energy, your help, your warmth, your presence. Unshakable people are not scary because they shout. They're scary because if you push them past a certain line, they're gone. No screaming, no spectacle, just absence. And because they can leave, they don't need to freak out during every argument. They're not terrified of losing you. They know they will survive without you. That inner security makes them calm. And that calm is exactly what most manipulators don't know how to handle. Ask yourself, in your conflicts, are you negotiating from, "I hope they don't abandon me," or from, "I will not abandon myself"? The first makes you cling, beg, over-explain, accept disrespect. The second makes you say, "Here is my line," once, cold, clear. Then you act accordingly. That means you don't say yes when you mean no just to avoid tension. You don't agree with lies just to keep things smooth. You don't join someone in attacking you just to make them feel better. You can compromise on plans, you don't compromise on your dignity. So how do you actually train this in the moment? When your heart is racing, your hands are shaking, your brain is screaming to defend yourself? You need a tiny playbook. 2 or 3 moves you can fall back on when everything goes sideways. Here's your starting set. Move 1. Slow your body, not the conflict. When the argument spikes, your instinct is to speed up, talk faster, interrupt, explain, justify. Don't. Let everyone else speed up. You slow down. Drop your shoulders, unclench your jaw. Lower your tone by 1 step. Answer half as many words as you want to say. Your nervous system will still be screaming, but your body will be telling a different story. And remember, in conflict, people believe the body more than the words. Move 2. Answer to the pattern, not the accusation. Unshakable people don't chase every knife. They look for the pattern behind it. Then they speak to that, calmly. "I'm noticing you insult me every time I set a boundary." Now the conversation is about their behavior, not your worth. Move 3. Decide what this conflict is allowed to cost you before it starts. If you argue with no limit in mind, you'll burn everything just to feel like you didn't lose. You'll miss work, you'll say unforgivable things, you'll blow up group chats. Instead, pick a cost limit. When you reach that line, you end the conversation. Not because you're losing, but because you're protecting what matters more. Part 1 is about one thing: shifting how you see conflict. From glitch to guarantee. From disaster to X-ray. From a place where you lose control to a place where you reveal control. You learned that avoiding small conflicts just delays bigger wars. You learned that in a fight, people respond to what you appear to be, not what you secretly are. You learned that it's safer to be quietly feared for your standards than desperately loved for your lack of them. In the next parts, we'll break down the rest of Machiavelli's unshakable playbook. How to choose which battles to enter and which to starve. How to stand your ground against manipulators without losing your mind. And how to walk away from conflict in a way that raises your power instead of shrinking it. For now, hold on to one sentence. You don't control when conflict arrives, but from this point on, you will control how much of yourself you hand over to it. You know that moment when someone raises their voice, twists your words, and you feel that rush of heat in your chest? Your brain screams, "Say something back." That's the trap. Most people think being unshakable in conflict means having the sharpest comebacks, the most brutal arguments, the perfect clapback saved in drafts. It doesn't. Being unshakable means you are the only one in the room who isn't being remote controlled by emotion. In part 1, you saw the first truth. Conflict is not a glitch, it's guaranteed. Tonight, we go deeper into Machiavelli's playbook. How to choose your battles like a ruler, not a child. How to command yourself before you try to command the room. And how to turn every conflict into an X-ray that shows you exactly who should never get that close to you again. Here's the first shift. Before you ever think about winning an argument, you learn to command yourself. Everyone hears that and thinks about commanding others. You should hear it and think about commanding you. You want your hands to obey you when you think, "Put the phone down." If you can't command yourself, you will always be the loudest soldier and the weakest general. Unshakable people don't start by trying to dominate the other side. They start by giving their own nervous system orders and being obeyed. It's not about being passive, it's about being deliberate. When you can command yourself in the middle of conflict, everything changes. Your silences get heavier. Your words get rarer. Your no gets nuclear. The next Machiavellian move is brutal but necessary. Understand that timing in conflict is more important than intensity. You've probably done this. You avoid a fight, avoid a fight, avoid a fight, then finally explode in the worst way, at the worst time, in front of the worst audience. That's not strength. That's procrastinated courage. In conflict, the wise man addresses the issue early, cleanly, before it rots. He says, "Hey, that comment wasn't okay with me," the first time it happens. Not after 20 similar comments have hardened into resentment. He sets a boundary when the behavior is small, instead of waiting until he's been humiliated publicly. He leaves a situation when he first realizes their respect is gone, not when he's already broken. The fool does the same thing, but at the end. He finally says what he needed to say years ago, but now it comes out as screaming. He finally leaves the job, but only after a mental breakdown. He finally admits the relationship is toxic, but only after they've hollowed him out. Same realization, different timing. One looks like strategy, the other looks like insanity. The difference? Doing it at once versus doing it finally. Being unshakable doesn't mean you never react. It means you react early and clean. You name the problem before you hate the person. You enforce your line before your self-respect is in pieces. You don't let your silence build a case that eventually explodes like a bomb in the middle of dinner. So how do you actually choose your battles like someone who's wise at once, not foolish finally? You run every conflict through 3 filters. Is this about my ego, my boundary, or reality? Ego fights? 90% of the time, let them go. Boundary and reality fights? Those are the ones where you plant your feet. If I win this argument, what do I actually gain? If the answer is, they'll finally admit I was right, that's not a gain, that's fantasy. You don't need their confession to know the truth. You need your own decisions to reflect it. Does engaging move me closer to the life I want, or just deeper into their chaos? If fighting means you're dragged back into cycles you already decided to leave, you don't fight, you walk. Silence, block, distance. That's your answer. Now there's a darker layer to all this. You are not just dealing with honest people who occasionally get emotional. Some conflicts are designed. Some people start fights not to solve anything, but to unbalance you. They want to make you look unhinged so they can claim the moral high ground. They want to drain your energy so you're too tired to leave. They want to keep you constantly explaining yourself so you never have the strength to observe them. For these players, your appearance in conflict matters more than anything. And Machiavelli understood exactly how dangerous appearances are. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel. That's why in a public argument, the calm liar often looks more believable than the shaking truth teller. That's why, after a breakup, the person who posts chilled, controlled photos is labeled the mature one, while the person venting on stories is labeled crazy, even if they were the one who got hurt. It's cruel, but it's real. Everyone sees what you appear to be, almost nobody feels what you're actually carrying. So you protect the appearance, not for vanity, for survival. Your tone, your pacing, your body language, your choice of when to respond and when to go silent, that's all part of the fight. You don't give them screenshot material. You don't give them voice notes they can play out of context. You don't give them drama they can perform for the crowd. Here's a tactical rule. If they raise their voice, you lower yours, or you end the conversation. If they insult you, you don't return fire. You name it once, I'm not going to stay in a conversation where I'm insulted, and you leave if it continues. If they start yelling in public, you don't yell back. You either take it somewhere private, or you walk away. This is not about pretending to be perfect. It's about refusing to let someone else's chaos write your character. Another Machiavellian layer: people test you, not once, over and over. They test your silence, your patience, your tolerance for disrespect. Unshakable people answer that question differently, not with speeches, but with patterns. They state their line once, maybe twice. After that, they don't argue about the line, they enforce it. Shout, you leave, no lecture. Name, click. Lie, gone. Over time, people realize, consciously or not, that conflict with you is, at best, a negotiation, not an opportunity to destroy you. You will lose some people when you start doing this. Good, you're supposed to. People who rely on your shakiness can't use you when you're steady. Let's get practical with one scenario. You're in an argument with someone who always flips things back on you. They answer, "You're so sensitive." Old you would chase that. "What do you mean nobody? Who said that?" Now you're defending your character instead of the original point. The conflict just got hijacked. Unshakable you does it differently. Them, "You're so sensitive." You, "Insulting me doesn't change the fact that you canceled last minute." If they keep attacking your personality instead of addressing the behavior, you stop playing. We're done. That's it. You don't drag them into understanding, you let them live with their version. Your boundary doesn't need their agreement to be real. Another scenario: your boss corners you in a meeting, questions your work in front of everyone in a way that feels like an attack. It's public, it's sharp, it's humiliating. Old you would either shrink and say, "Sorry, I'll do better," or blow up and say something that costs you your job. Unshakable you understands something else. Power isn't in winning that moment. Power is in deciding where this conflict will be judged. So you stay factual and minimal in the room. I hear your concerns. Calm. No defensiveness. No shaking voice. Later, in writing, you lay out the facts. You document. You CC who needs to be CC'd. You move the conflict from a chaotic public scene to a controlled record. That's Machiavellian, not in the evil way, in the strategic way. Part 2 is about shifting from reacting to selecting. Selecting which conflicts deserve your breath. Selecting when to speak and when to starve the fire. Selecting whether this moment needs your ego satisfied or your future protected. You learned that commanding yourself is the first command. That wise people act early, not explosively late. That appearances in conflict are not shallow, they're part of the battlefield. That some arguments are traps, designed to make you perform instability for an audience. And that real strength is often silent, documented, and slow, not loud, messy, and instant. In the next parts, we'll go even darker and sharper. How to stay emotionally unreachable when people weaponize guilt and shame in fights. How to use silence as a weapon without turning into a stone. And how to walk out of conflicts with more power than you had going in, because you chose the terms instead of letting them drag you by your throat. For now, remember this. You don't have to win every battle. You just have to stop losing yourself in them. You've noticed this, right? One second you're talking about what they did. The next second you're defending who you are. That's not an accident. That's a tactic. Most people don't fight fair. They don't argue the facts. They pull on your deepest fears of being abandoned, of being the bad guy, of being unlovable. And if you don't know what's happening, you'll spend the whole conflict trying to prove you're a good person, while the real problem stands untouched. That's how you lose power, even when you're right. So if part 1 was about expecting conflict, and part 2 was about commanding yourself, part 3 is about something darker and sharper, becoming emotionally unreachable in conflict. Not numb, not robotic, just untouchable where it matters most. So no one can grab your guilt, twist your shame, and make you kneel inside a fight you should be walking out of. Here's the first ugly truth you need to accept. A lot of people don't need logic to win. They just need your reaction. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago. He wasn't talking about texting and trauma, but he was talking about how easily people are manipulated. Most of the time, your immediate need in conflict isn't justice, it's relief. Relief from feeling misunderstood. Relief from being blamed. Relief from the idea that you might be the bad one. A smart manipulator doesn't need to out-argue you. You hear those lines and your brain panics. You forget the original issue. You rush to reassure them. No, you're not the villain. I appreciate you. I don't hate you. And just like that, the roles flip. They're the wounded one. You're the attacker. You start apologizing for bringing up the problem at all. You're disarmed. They win. Being unshakable doesn't mean those lines stop hurting. It means you stop obeying them. You start hearing them as alarms, not commands. You don't say it out loud. You say it in your head. Name it, and it loses half its power. Now, instead of reacting, you're observing. You're not inside the tornado. You're standing outside, watching its shape. Here's a simple rule. If they talk about what happened, you can stay. If they keep talking about what kind of person you are, you step back. One is behavior. The other is character assassination. The first is negotiable. The second is your cue to detach. So how do you actually become emotionally unreachable without turning into a brick wall? You build what I'll call your inner court. In the old days, a prince had advisors, strong, steady people whose voices mattered more than the crowds. You are not a prince in Florence, but you still need great men in your inner court. Not influencers, not random friends, A short list of people whose judgment you actually respect. It might be a mentor, a brutally honest friend, an older sibling, even the future version of yourself you can clearly imagine. When conflict hits, everyone will have an opinion about you. They'll call you selfish, ungrateful, dramatic, weak. If every random voice counts, you will crumble. Someone says, "You've changed." If the answer from your inner court is, "No, this boundary makes sense," then their guilt trips don't land. They just reveal who they are when they don't get their way. Most of the time, your immediate need in conflict isn't justice, it's relief. Relief from feeling misunderstood, relief from being blamed, relief from the idea that you might be the bad one. A smart manipulator doesn't need to out-argue you. You hear those lines and your brain panics. You forget the original issue. You rush to reassure them. No, you're not the villain. I appreciate you. I don't hate you. And just like that, the roles flip. They're the wounded one. You're the attacker. You start apologizing for bringing up the problem at all. You're disarmed. They win. Being unshakable doesn't mean those lines stop hurting. It means you stop obeying them. You start hearing them as alarms, not commands. You don't say it out loud, you say it in your head. Name it, and it loses half its power. Now, instead of reacting, you're observing. You're not inside the tornado. You're standing outside, watching its shape. Here's a simple rule. If they talk about what happened, you can stay. If they keep talking about what kind of person you are, you step back. One is behavior. The other is character assassination. The first is negotiable. The second is your cue to detach. So how do you actually become emotionally unreachable without turning into a brick wall? You build what I'll call your inner court. In the old days, a prince had advisors, strong, steady people whose voices mattered more than the crowds. You are not a prince in Florence, but you still need great men in your inner court. Not influencers, not random friends, a short list of people whose judgment you actually respect. It might be a mentor, a brutally honest friend, an older sibling, even the future version of yourself you can clearly imagine. When conflict hits, everyone will have an opinion about you. They'll call you selfish, ungrateful, dramatic, weak. If every random voice counts, you will crumble. Someone says, "You've changed." If the answer from your inner court is, "No, this boundary makes sense," then their guilt trips don't land. They just reveal who they are when they don't get their way. Next, silence. You've heard use silence as a weapon a million times online, usually from people who are just playing ego games. That's not what we're doing here. Silence is not about punishing the other person. It's about protecting the part of you that doesn't need to be dragged through every storm. There are three kinds of silence in conflict: weak, strategic, and final. Weak silence is when you shut down, stew, and say nothing, but inside you're begging them to notice and fix it. That's not power, that's mutants. Strategic silence is when you pause after making a clear point or decision. You let your words land. You don't rush to fill the gap with nervous apologizing. Final silence is when you've decided this conversation is over, for now or forever, and you no longer engage. You don't keep explaining, you don't respond to bait, you don't send late-night essays. You're done. Unshakable people live mostly in strategic and final silence. They speak clearly once or twice, then they either let the silence hold the boundary or they leave. You can train this. Next time you say something important in a conflict, "I don't accept being spoken to like that," or "This isn't working for me." Stop talking after the period. Count 3 slow breaths in your head. Or, "I don't know, maybe I'm wrong." You swallow it. Let them sit with what you actually said. You'll be shocked how often people reveal themselves when you give them that silence. Some will get defensive, attack, mock you. Others will soften, reflect, adjust. Either way, you got data. And you got it without begging. Now, let's talk about endurance. Because being unshakable isn't just about one argument, it's about who you're becoming across hundreds of them. That's where most people give up. They say, "I tried staying calm once, didn't work." It doesn't mean hard things magically become easy. It means if you are truly willing to become unshakable, the awkwardness, the practice, the slip-ups, the ugly first tries, they stop being a reason to quit. They just become the price. You will mess this up at first. You'll promise yourself, "I won't raise my voice," and then 5 minutes later, you're yelling. You'll plan to leave the conversation and then find yourself still arguing an hour later. That doesn't mean you're weak. It means your old patterns are strong. Last fight, maybe you sent 10 paragraphs. This time, you stopped at 3. That's progress. Last month, one comment ruined your whole week. This month, it ruined a day. That's progress. Last year, a conflict made you question your entire worth. This year, it makes you question that relationship. That's massive progress. Real unshakable power is built in those tiny shifts, not in one cinematic confrontation where you suddenly turn into a stone-faced king. Let's hit some specific emotional weapons people use in conflict and how an unshakable version of you responds. Guilt hooks. After everything I've done for you. Shakeable you. I know, I'm so grateful, I'm sorry, Unshakable you. I appreciate what you've done. Shakeable you. Scrambles to prove you're not. Reality denial. That never happened, when it clearly did. Shakeable you. Fights to prove your memory is right. Unshakable you. I remember it differently. Shakeable you. Stays even when the conversation is abusive. Unshakable you. I care about this. I also care about how it's handled. Notice something. The unshakable responses don't try to fix their feelings. They just anchor your position. You're not trying to drag them into seeing you as good. You're making sure you don't see yourself as weak. Here's the deepest shift of all. Stop using conflict to prove your value. Once you do that, half your shakiness vanishes. No. If they wanted to treat you right, they already would. People who care about you don't need a courtroom scene to stop hurting you. They might need feedback, they might need clarity, but they don't need you sobbing your entire biography just to believe you deserve basic respect. Your value is not on trial in every fight. The moment you feel like it is, that's your red flag. Once you sense that second goal, your job is not to keep debating. Your job is to get out. Part 3 is about building that inner hardness, not around your heart, but around your identity. You can still care, you can still love, you can still apologize when you're wrong. But whether they scream, guilt, twist, cry, or walk away, there is a part of you they cannot reach. In the final part, we'll take everything you've learned about expecting conflict, choosing battles, commanding yourself, and becoming emotionally unreachable, and we'll turn it into a full Machiavellian playbook. How to walk into conflict already holding the power, how to leave with more leverage than you started with, and how to make your calm in war the one thing they can never take from you. Because being unshakable isn't about never being attacked, it's about what breaks first when you are under attack, the situation or you. From now on, it won't be you. By now you can feel it, can't you? You're not fantasizing about winning every argument anymore. You're thinking about something heavier. How do I walk into any conflict and not lose myself? How do I stop being the one who shakes, over-explains, and apologizes for existing while other people stay calm and rewrite the story? This is the final shift, turning everything you've learned into a playbook you actually use. So unshakable isn't just a mood, it's your default setting under fire. Let's start at the highest level. There are only 3 kinds of conflict in your life. Conflicts you must enter, conflicts you can shape from a distance, conflicts you must starve. When you don't know the difference, you bleed everywhere. You fight people in comments as hard as you fight your boss. You give strangers the same emotional access as your family. You bring the same intensity to a misunderstanding at a cafe that you bring to someone betraying your trust. No wonder you're exhausted. Conflicts you must enter are the ones that touch your core, your safety, your dignity, your future. The partner who keeps crossing a line you've clearly drawn. The boss who publicly disrespects you. The friend who betrays your trust in a way that can't be shrugged off. These are battles where silence equals consent. If you don't step in, you're teaching the world how to treat you. Conflicts you can shape from a distance are strategic. You don't storm the room, you move quietly around it. You document, you adjust access, you redirect resources. You change what you'll do next time, who you'll trust, what you'll sign, what you'll tolerate. You might never get the satisfaction of a dramatic showdown, but you get something far better: control. Conflicts you must starve are bait. Petty, circular, ego-driven drama. The argument your relative starts every holiday. The coworker who loves debating your boundaries. The ex who pokes you to see if they still have access. These are not real conflicts. These are hooks. If you bite, you lose. The unshakable version of you doesn't bite. You let the hook hit air. Now here's the part most people never learn. Being unshakable is less about what you do in conflict and more about what you do before conflict. You can't suddenly become calm, clear, and powerful if the rest of your life is chaos. Your habits bleed into your fights. If, outside of conflict, you constantly over-explain yourself, apologize for existing, say yes when you mean no, answer messages instantly because you're scared of disappointing people, then in conflict you will do the same, just louder. The argument doesn't create your behavior, it magnifies it. So your playbook starts in the quiet. No essays, no softening your no with 10 excuses. The more often you hold your line in peace, the less shocking it is to hold it in war. You practice small exits, leaving a conversation when your energy is gone, closing apps when you feel triggered instead of doom scrolling, not responding the second your phone buzzes. You teach your nervous system that nothing explodes when you step back. So when you need to step back in conflict, your body doesn't freak out. It's familiar now. You practice stillness, sitting with the urge to defend yourself and not acting on it immediately. That's a muscle. At first, it burns. Over time, it becomes your edge. Most people cannot tolerate 2 seconds of feeling misunderstood. They scramble to fix the image. You let it sit. You know who you are. You don't need the room to vote on it. Then there's your rules of engagement, your personal laws for conflict. Write these down if you need to. I don't fight when I'm exhausted. I don't fight to change someone's mind. I fight to express my line. I don't fight in front of audiences that want a show. I don't fight over text when it should be said once in person or not at all. I don't fight to stay in places that are already killing me. These laws are your armor. It's not just a vibe, it's a policy. Now, let's talk about what winning actually looks like. That would be nice, sure, but real winning is quieter. Winning is not raising your voice once, even though they tried everything to make you snap. Winning is not sending the text you know you'd regret. Winning is stopping the conversation when it turns into character assassination. Winning is making a decision after the conflict that protects you next time. Sometimes winning is leaving the relationship, even if they get to be the victim in the story they tell others. Sometimes winning is letting someone be wrong about you because you finally care more about your reality than their narrative. That's the Machiavellian part nobody talks about. Power is rarely loud. It sits in what you're willing to lose in order to keep yourself. You might lose being the good one in their eyes. You might lose being invited to every conversation. You might lose the comfort of being the one who always bends first. In exchange, you gain something they can't give you and can't take away: a spine that doesn't shake just because someone else is screaming. Now picture this. You're walking into a hard conversation you can't avoid. Maybe it's a boss, a partner, a parent, a friend. You've rehearsed it in your head 100 times. Old you would already be shaking. You don't go in to win them over. You go in to represent yourself. That alone changes your tone. You stop trying to persuade. You start trying to be precise. You lay out what happened, how it affected you, what you can and cannot accept going forward. You don't pad it with 10, "Sorry if this sounds crazy," disclaimers. You don't water it down so they won't feel bad. If you're afraid they'll feel bad simply because you're telling the truth, that's probably the exact truth you've needed to say for years. And then the most important part, you watch. Do they deflect, attack, blame shift, guilt trip? Or do they pause, reflect, ask questions, admit, adjust? Their response tells you everything you need to know. Not about you, but about whether this is a place you can be safe in long term. Unshakable people don't spend years trying to teach grown adults the basics of respect. They give feedback. They watch the response. And if the response is chaos, they don't double down on teaching. They double down on exiting. You're not a reform school for emotionally irresponsible people. You are an adult building a life. So where does Machiavelli sit in all of this? Not as some cartoon devil on your shoulder, as the voice that whispers the harsh truths you need when your people-pleaser brain lies to you. The voice that reminds you. Conflict avoided becomes war delayed. People judge what you appear to be under pressure, not what you intend. You cannot be good in a world of not good people without some cruelty toward your own weakness. Cruelty not to others. Here's what an unshakable version of you looks like now. In arguments, your pulse slows instead of spikes. Your sentences get shorter instead of longer. You ask more questions and make fewer accusations. You no longer explain your worth, you simply remove it from discount shelves. People will notice the difference. They might say you're colder, less available, harder to push. They're right. You're not supposed to be easy to push. Slowly, your reputation changes. That's what unshakable actually is. Not a stone face, a steady one. Not a muted heart, a guarded one. Not a person without conflict, a person who moves through conflict like they've been there before and already know who they are on the other side. So here's your recap. You learned that conflict is not a glitch to avoid, but a test you can prepare for. You learned to command yourself first, voice, body, timing, before you ever try to command a room. You learned to filter battles, ego, boundary, or reality. You learned to recognize guilt, shame, and manipulation as tactics, not truths. You learned to build an inner court whose opinion matters more than the crowd's. People will notice the difference. They might say you're colder, less available, harder to push. They're right. You're not supposed to be easy to push. Slowly, your reputation changes. That's what unshakable actually is. Not a stone face, a steady one. Not a muted heart, a guarded one. Not a person without conflict, a person who moves through conflict like they've been there before and already know who they are on the other side. So here's your recap. You learned that conflict is not a glitch to avoid, but a test you can prepare for. You learned to command yourself first, voice, body, timing, before you ever try to command a room. You learned to filter battles, ego, boundary, or reality. You learn to recognize guilt, shame, and manipulation as tactics, not truths. You learn to build an inner court whose opinion matters more than the crowd's. You learn to use silence as a shield and a scalpel, not as a sulk. You learned that the real win is not them admitting you're right. It's you leaving the battlefield without sacrificing your self-respect. Now the choice is simple and brutal. You can close this and keep doing what you've always done, shaking through every argument, bleeding in fights that should have ended years ago, letting anyone with a louder voice drag you out of yourself. Or you can decide that from this point forward, conflict will reveal your power, not erase it. If you're done letting every argument knock you off center, tap like. If you're ready to become the person they can't rattle, can't bait, and can't turn into a show, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss what comes next. Drop a comment with unshakable so I know you're not just consuming this, you're rewiring how you show up in every conflict from here on out. And send this to the one person who always shakes in fights, who keeps apologizing for being hurt, who has never been told they're allowed to stay calm and still be powerful. Because this isn't self-help, this is strategy. This is war. And from tonight on, you're not just in the war, you're the one who doesn't move when the room starts shaking.